we built a 275 plus Section 8 gold mine in just a few years. So like I said, these are the 6 steps we did. First, we went ahead and bought as many units as we could using our own cash and creative financing. Some of the units, when we first got started in the Section 8 business, Anthony was able to pick up for as little as $1,200 to $2,500 down by taking over people's payments. Second, we rented these Section 8 tenants, and we gained the management experience needed to be able to become pros in the industry and got rid of our management companies that we hired and started our own in-house to make everything streamlined. Then we found partners by accident. We're at Masterminds, just explaining our wins, how we scaled really fast to 100 units within a very short amount of time. And these people wanted to put their money to work. So we did it. We took their cash. We put in the sweat equity. We're the guys on the ground. We went ahead and raised the rents, increased the value of the property with Section 8 tenants, which boosts the value amazingly. Then we did our favorite thing, the Bird method. We did a cash out refinance. We went ahead and paid off all their shares. They made a hefty return. And guess what? We kept the units for ourselves. And we repeated this process over and over again till we have today well over 275 plus units. All right. I'm going to hand over to Anthony now. He'll kind of break down what Section 8 is and kind of give you the ins and outs of that.
All right. So let's jump right into it. So what is Section 8? Section 8 basically is just a federal housing assistance program that provides rental subsidies to low-income families and individuals. So when you invest in a Section 8 property, you're agreeing to rent it to a Section 8 tenant. The government, the best part, will then pay you the majority portion, if not all of the rent, directly to your bank account each and every month. And it's amazing. It's like Christmas, the first week of every month for James and I, we get that direct deposit like that, and it's awesome. So how did we get started in Section 8, right? So James has been doing real estate for a very long time. He had real estate rentals before him and I partnered up, and he was doing retail. I've been doing it for quite some time as well, but a little bit different. So when James and I partnered up, we bought a 16 package portfolio, and you can see there the top left is the picture of our light bulb moment is the property that we bought that had a Section 8 tenant in it. The top right, all we did to it was just paint the property. We did a cash out refi, which we do pretty often. Really just put some lipstick on a pig, as they say. Just brightened up the outside, did the cash out refi. Didn't do anything to the inside. But anyways, back when we first bought that property, this tenant in this one had been there for over 7 years. So following closing, we learned that the tenant was a Section 8 tenant, and then immediately thought of the headache of having to learn and navigate the paperwork involved for the transfer from the prior owner and the housing authority to us. Okay. So right away we're like, oh man, but we learned a big lesson. So I got started down in Miami. I was my real estate journey. I've lived down in Miami for half a dozen years or so. I still go back and forth there quite often. And I started my journey down there. I started off doing wholesaling. While I had my 9-to-5 job, I was driving Uber and Lyft for marketing dollars. Usually from 8 p.m. to like 1 a.m. Toss that into marketing, bandit signs, letters, things like that. And, started doing wholesaling. And then from there, after a couple of years, started to build up and then started to get into the rental game, connected with James over a deal in Memphis. And, one thing led to another. So I have some roots in Miami. So when I was in Memphis buying with James, I went back to Miami and visited an old friend, and we went out on his boat one night. And the pictures there are actually from that night that we went out there. And they're memorable to me now because this was kind of like, this changed the game for me and for us overall. So we got back in at about midnight. We went to a food truck on Biscayne Boulevard. So if you know anything about Miami, that's like a main artery that runs up and down there. And we sat in the parking lot, table and chair set up, and Miami never sleeps. And we just sat there eating empanadas and, whatnot, and just chit-chatting. And I looked across the street, and there is a Taco Bell and a Wendy's. And they both had signs up, now hiring at $15 an hour. And I just happened to say to him, like, isn't it crazy that these places can't find people for $15 an hour? And again, this was, a few years ago. which was well above minimum wage. I think probably double the minimum wage at the time. It's still above minimum wage now. And my buddy, he's Puerto Rican, so he very loud, boisterous, and funny. And he's like, "Bro, you know why?" And I was like, "No, Jose, how about you tell me?" And he's like, "Because the people that work at these places, the majority of them, not all of them, but the majority of them, live off of the government. So making $15 an hour, they're actually making too much money." And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" He's like, "Well, they get their food paid for, food stamps or EBT. They get their electric, their water, all of that paid for, and they get their housing paid for. But the more that they make, the more that they have to pay into that. And then if they make too much, then they don't qualify for it." And I said, "Really?" And he invested in some real estate down there in Miami. He's about 60 or so years ago. And it's funny because during that, he was telling me how the generations just kind of live off of, Section 8 and just kind of generational, right? That's why it's kind of cool when you see, an athlete or something kind of break out of that and, make themselves better, because it's not easy to do when that's all you're surrounded by. And he just happened to tell me, he's like, "I wish I, started doing Section 8 years ago and renting to this." And I was like, "It's funny you say that. We just bought properties. One of them's a Section 8 tenant." And that was like the aha. I went back to Memphis and I said, "James, I think we're on to something here." So I dug deep into Section 8, finding out all about it, what you need to do to qualify, the paperwork, contacting the housing authority, all of that. So fast forward, this property right there was currently rented at $600 a month when we first bought it. Okay. Once I dug into it, I found out it was just one piece of paper I had to fill out and ask for a rent increase. And immediately from there, it went from $600 a month. I got the new rent approved to $950 a month. There's the copy of that lease there in the middle, circled with the $600 a month back when we bought it. The bottom is currently what that property is at, which is $1,050 per month. Let me hide myself there, and you can see on the bottom right, it's circled at $1,050 per month. So I saw actually how kind of easy it was. And then I said to James, I think we're really onto something here. And from there, we kind of changed our entire business model. And this is the inside of the property, right? It still looks like that to this day. These pictures are actually pretty recent. You can see there's no crazy holes in the walls, doors aren't falling off. Like, you can look at these pictures and think, okay, they might have less furniture than I might have in my place overall. You got to remember, these are, economically disadvantaged people that get the government subsidies, right? But overall, it's kept in good shape. So you hear a lot of people out there, Section 8 tenants are the worst and blah, blah, blah. They're actually not. They're just people like you and I, okay? And you got to think about it. Why would they want to live in a house that they just completely destroyed? And also, too, there's a lot of leverage that you have on it, because if they destroy the property, they're going to lose that voucher. And who wants to lose free housing for life? So here's just a few different LLCs that James and I own, getting paid for the housing authority. You see here 27,000, 144,000, 65. There's a big one. We own a lot of properties in that one, 353,000 or so. I want you to just close your eyes for 1 minute and just imagine what kind of direct deposit the first week of every month change my life, change your life, right? And you might be saying to yourself, well, you guys are doing this for a long time and that's unattainable to me. It's not. It's literally not. It's actually very easy to do. We've had many students get one property in less than a month, and before that they found out the system and they're up to 10 in 6 months, and they're up to 20 and 40 in a year. It becomes super easy to wash, rinse, and repeat because of one thing that you don't get with Airbnb, that you don't get with retail tenants, is that your mortgage is going to be paid each and every month. You are guaranteed that rent to come in because the government pays it directly to you. You don't have to worry about a retail tenant, waking up, going to work, saving that money, being a good, person and paying you every month. You don't have to worry about a booking on an Airbnb, or is the city that I'm in going to get shut down by Airbnb because Marriott and these other hotels are lobbying against laws, so Airbnb is outlawed, right? You don't have to worry about that. Section 8 government housing has been around for many, many years, and it is not going anywhere. There's over 4 million people on it, and the worse off the economy gets, the number of people just grows on there. So maybe you're wanting to retire yourself or your wife. Maybe your wife makes $50,000-$60,000 a year, and you want to retire them so they can spend time and raise your kids or whatever the case may be, or a parent or whatever that. You're only 5-10 properties away from that, and you can do that. And before you know it, you could be getting the $27,000 in direct deposits or 6 figures. It's really not that hard. And we've created a blueprint for you that makes it like so much easier. So what are the benefits overall to investing in Section 8? So as I spoke before, guaranteed rent payments. Section 8 investing lets you receive guaranteed rent to your bank account each and every month. Again, like I said, if not all, at least the majority portion of it. You get tax incentives for just owning real estate in general, okay? Maybe you have a 9-to-5 job and, a W-2 and you make $50,000, $70,000, $100,000, but you're paying 20% tax at the end of the year, right? Well, just owning one rental property or two, you can offset those taxes that you pay. So there's huge tax incentives for owning real estate in general. And one thing that not a lot of people talk about is higher rent amount. On average, Section 8 pays 20 to 30% more than retail rents. And here's an example for you. This is the FMR for 2024, which stands for Fair Market Rent, and it's put out by HUD, okay? You can see on the bottom right, we'll just look at the 4-bedroom column. On the bottom right, 2023, we were getting $1,500, a little over $1,500 for 4 bedrooms. The top right, we're now getting close to $2,000 in a lot of areas, and this is for Memphis, for 4 bedrooms. Just to put this in perspective for you, we know of other big investors and all over, but one in particular in Memphis has over 200 doors himself. He does a little bit of the Airbnb model, but he does mostly retail. We have houses next door to him, same area, same zip codes. A 4-bedroom house that we're getting $1,500, $1,700, $1,800 plus a month on, Section 8, he's getting $1,250 a month on retail. Big difference. In fact, when rates go up, he's actually priced out of the game to be able to do it, to be able to rent to his retail tenants because he just can't afford it. He negative cash flows on it, but there's no problem when you're getting paid, $600-$700 or more in some areas than a retail tenant. So that is just a huge benefit. So big advantages as well is banks love to lend on affordable housing. It's guaranteed and low risk. So market cycles happen, different policies get put out there. Banks tighten up a lot of times, right? Whatever the case may be. Banks tend to know at that point what your business plan is. And they know that you rent to Section 8 and do affordable housing and get paid for the government. They're more likely to lend to you than an Airbnb investor or a retail investor, okay? Because they just know that it's much more lower risk than to lending to someone else that's not doing that. Another big thing is tenants stick around for years, which means you save on turnover costs and repairs. Average Section 8 tenant sticks around for 5.5 years in your property. And usually the only reason why they move to another property is because maybe they had an extra kid or two. So they go from a 2 or 3 bedroom to a 3 or a 4 bedroom. After that, it's really just passive income. You just pass the inspections and you just keep the property up to date. And that's it. So I'm going to turn this over to James. I need a drink of water and I'll be back shortly.
I appreciate it. So like I said, this works for everybody. If you're brand new, if you're looking to purchase your first rental, if you have a full-time job, a lot of our students, they start out as dentists, their current profession might be a doctor, librarian, working fast food, whatever the case is. As long as you have 3 to 5 hours a week to put into this, to do the research, make the offers, you can close on a unit. It's that simple and generate passive income. And it doesn't matter if you're super advanced. So like I said, I had tons and tons of doors way before I did Section 8. And I went at that and, over the last several years, been turning my whole entire portfolio over to Section 8. Because why? Less headache. And we'll go that to in a second, but it's better. So no matter if you're a guy with 1 unit or if you have 25 units, 5 units, 6 units, don't make a difference. Usually if you're more advanced, it's just easier and faster because the ball's all rolling for you guys, okay? All right, let's go ahead and bust some myths about Section 8 tenants. Now, like I said, for years, I stayed away from Section 8 because Section 8 always had a bad, rap sheet and just in the market I was in. And my property manager always talks so bad about those tenants. But let's go through and bust 4 of these real fast. The first one is the tenant will trash my property. Listen, the truth is any tenant can trash your property. I've had retail tenants within 3 or 4 months destroy my whole entire house. And now I've had Section 8 tenants that have been in my house for 6 or 7 years and literally take wonderful condition of it. That's why it's so important to make sure you screen your tenants. That's the most crucial part of this job is making sure you find that perfect good tenant for your property. And by doing that, you'll make sure your unit is either trashed or not. It doesn't really make a difference if they're Section 8. The second myth is Section 8 tenants are hard to evict. Now listen, the truth is Section 8 tenants have to follow the same eviction process as any other tenant. You can't discriminate against someone based on their housing assistance. If they break the lease and don't pay their rent, guess what? You can evict them as usual. And the best thing about Section 8 is you actually get paid all the way until that unit is redeemed off the program or that tenant is out of your house, which is kind of a bonus. Myth number 3, Section 8 tenants will never move out. The truth is, this is actually a benefit of Section 8. The fact that the tenant stays longer, there's less turnovers, less vacancies, less costs on you. You also have a steady stream of income. Plus, a lot of tenants like to sign longer leases, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 years after that first lease. They want to be there for as long as you let them. It's easier for them, and it's better for us as landlords. Myth number 4, Section 8 tenants will ignore my lease terms. The truth is, as a Section 8 owner and landlord, you have so much different stuff that you can hold over these tenants in the form of your lease. If they don't pay their fair share, they can get evicted, they can lose their voucher. If you report them for any other lease violations in your lease, they can lose their voucher and they'll get suspended until they fix that lease violation. So with a Section 8 tenant, you have a lot of leverage to make sure they're actually following the rules to a T when it comes to your lease, which is nice.